South Africa, where I visited 19 cities and 7 universities there. So I say, Siya Namkela Nonki. And most importantly, Molo. Alright? So, speaking Mosa, the native tongue of our great icon and leader, we must give him all due praise as he has inspired nations and generations. Nelson Mandela, please give him a round of applause. And so a young brother is connected. There's no doubt that we are history. But really, I want to thank all the previous speakers here today. I think most importantly, there was a trajectory from each avenue of choice in which we were to learn from our identity, which is critical to this entire movement that we're facing here today, most importantly, connecting throughout the Pan-African continent. And in my opinion, we're economics pursuit. I'm the first African-American to bridge AAAS, African-American and African Studies, in the Eli Broad School of Business, where I'm studying economics and entrepreneurship. And so, although we have attained civil rights, now it's time for silver rights. We understand that. And you cannot have wealth without what? Good health. So I thank dear doctor for educating us and getting us in the spirit and mindset that our temple must be in order. What my message is today, and it really deals with identity in Africa and our economic pursuits, and I'm going to try to deal in because right here in America, we still catching a lot of heck. And so my message is it's time to get back to what we all are, which is black. And so as we know, according to the recent studies that are published, we know that black males make up about 13% of the U.S. population and 50% of them are diagnosed with HIV. We know that. Yeah. We also know that 72% of black mothers are unwed, and most importantly, it's much higher than Asians, Hispanics, and other minority groups by large leaps and bounds. This affects us all. But we also notice that nearly half of African American high schools in low income areas, the dropout rate is between 40 and 50%. We know that as well, which the disparity between white and black is huge. We also know that fewer than half of black students who enroll in four-year institutions of higher education nationally, the average is that a large percentage within 6 years, students of only 57% actually matriculate. We got work to do. And most importantly, we know the racial composition of the U.S. prison system, in which Michelle Alexander would call the new Jim Crow, is the new form of economic slavery. And in capturing our community, our young black men are now being pushed in the direction. We know that. Now, it's not true there are more black males in prison than in college. That's not the truth. We know that there are now more black males in college than in prison. So we are moving forward as we continue to progress. But most importantly, in the midst of American society and its tradition, and most importantly, its transition of African Americans and Africans, we have been advised since the times of Lincoln, during the ending since 1865 in slavery, that the Emancipation Proclamation Constitution told us that life, liberty, and justice was a pursuit here in America. But most importantly, we also know that we have to ask a question to ourselves. Are African Americans and Africans worse off today than yesterday, or since the times of slavery? In spite of all the advancements in society and education and business and private and public sector, faith-based clergy and politics, and even the election of an African to the president of these United States of America, President Barack Obama, you can give him a round of applause. We still have to beg the question, is this a post-racial society, or are things getting worse? Some say the clock is being turned back on all the advancements made throughout history in terms of women's rights and abolition of slavery and the American apartheid system called Jim Crow and Plessy versus Ferguson and Brown versus Board of Education and segregation before black folk had the ability to integrate where our identity was completely lost. Has these levels of advancement led African Americans and African people toward what capitalism would project as life, liberty, and justice, and a certain quality of life for our families, our children, and our communities? Believe me, education is the key to our liberation. We must gain knowledge and wisdom to move forward. We must connect with our African identity. Most importantly, this brings us to a scenario that in answering this question, it helps me define this economic struggle for equality and economic independence for our people. Civil rights without economic justice is just plain old civil rights. And we find it out that after civil rights, without an economic agenda and plan attached to it, we are still faced with the same ills that are perpetuated by capitalism today. Did we really achieve our 40 acres and a mule that we were promised? Some got some land and it was taken right back. You look at where we are today, 140 years later, and most Africans and African Americans don't own anything in this country. 140 years later. So what that tell you how far we've been since slavery, despite individual success. An impossible journey back to black is where we're going. African Americans have been entrepreneurs since the days of slavery. Even during slavery, innovation, crafty, and creative slaves used trades to gain independence and a special place on the plantation. On September 18th, 1895, African Americans and a spokesperson and a leader at that time, Booker T. Washington, many of you have heard of him. He spoke before a major white dominant crowd and gave the Atlanta Compromise. In that speech, he said in public sentiment, which prepared in advance, that African Americans can be a vital part of America's society if you allow them to have economic opportunity. If we had these opportunities and vocations and we could teach our children to mend for themselves, we wouldn't have to depend on no one else. We are an economy of our own. Booker T believed that free slaves could make and contribute to the society by taking these vocations and trades that would lead to eventual economic success and a win-win equality in post-slavery in America. We have African Americans for a long time who have seen economic wealth at certain times. With only less than 3% of the American economy today, people like Cornelius Vanderbilt, Rockefeller, Carnegie, and J.P. Morgan, Chase, and Henry Ford own more today than the entire African American community. Think about that. It's a fact. We got to get back to black. It's about the money. All right? Dr. William Edward Barnhart Dubois, Howard University's first black PhD, said now is the accepted time. Not tomorrow, not sometime more convenient. It is today that our best work can be done, not some future day or present. It is today that we fit ourselves for a greater usefulness for tomorrow. Today is the seed time, black people. Now are the hours of our work, and tomorrow comes the harvest and the playtime. We got work to do from the first black PhD. We as Africans and African Americans have made significant gains and accomplishments throughout history and followed in the line of Marcus Mosiah Garvey, a Pan-Africanist. And he said, a people without their knowledge of their past history, origin, and culture is like a tree without its roots. Let us shape our destiny and set it before the qualities of humanity, justice, love, charity, mercy, and equality. Upon this foundation shall we build upon a race. I feel that God, who is divine and the almighty creator of the world, shall bless this race which is ours, shall reconnect us to our homeland. This reminds me of great symbolism of a far-reaching manifestation. It calls for our future scholar activists and all of our young people here today to search for excellence, to trace your roots back when African Americans acquired wealth when they had no choice but to support each other. Blacks during segregation had no choice but to build grocery stores, so circulate the black dollar, support one another, have retail, professions, doctors, and lawyers. The African and the African American community must get back to black. African Americans are crucial in this consumer economy in the sphere of which it is graspfully and grown. Just think about this, and we're going to switch to a more positive note. With the buying power of nearly $1.2 trillion estimated by 2015, African Americans, if they were a country, would be the 16th largest economy in the world. It would be larger than Canada and Australia put together. Think of the power of the dollar that we have. But 98% of that dollar is spent outside of the black community. Nearly 1 out of 7 babies are born in the United States are of African descent. The country, which used to be minority, is now the majority. And going to the future, knowing that fact, we have an opportunity in front of us. Now, the one thing they tried to do was to separate and victimize and deplorize what Africa looks like to African Americans. We can no longer allow that imagery to take place here in the United States because the first in the creation of society and science and earth started with the motherland. And I'm sorry, brothers, I'm a single black man. I've never seen such fine, beautiful, intelligent sisters in my life. So black is beautiful. And you saw my eyebrow twitch, right? So it's time to get back to black when we think about the Tulsa, Oklahoma race riots, which motivated conflicts in 1921, where whites attacked blacks in a black business district that during 16 hours of an assault, 800 people were killed, 6,000 residents were arrested, many more untracked, thousands of blocks of businesses were destroyed, and Black Wall Street was the first American Holocaust on American soil. It got rid of that black economic paradise. We started to figure it out. So we're not reinventing the wheel, because even in Detroit between 1914 and 1951, Black Bottom, in which many of you have heard, and if not, became a place of renaissance and entertainment and style and finesse. And people travel from all over the world to come here to listen to greatness where Motown was created. The world and the music had changed in our African roots and bloodline. We think of Dr. Carter G. Woodson, the second black PhD from Harvard University and the father of black history, stated in a world-renowned book called The Miseducation of the Negro. If you can control a man's thinking, you do not have to worry about his actions. When you determine what a man shall think, you do not have to concern yourself about what he will do. When you determine what a man should have in his concern and what he do, a man will make you feel that he is inferior. You do not have to compel him to accept his inferior status, for he will seek it himself. If you make a man think that he is justly an outcast, you do not have to order him to the back of the door. He will go without being told, or he will make one for himself. So black folks, we gotta wake up. We gotta get back to black. I got 3 minutes in essence, but I want to let you know, excuse me, that in our pursuits, there's more than 1.9 million African American businesses in the entire country. We're always looking for capital. We're always looking for investments. We're looking for resources. But when you go home, the resources are there, and that's in Africa. It's time to connect our economies, our consciousness, our intellectual capabilities. Nkrumah and Lumumba, they got it. That's why we have to step up to the front line again, as Africans and African Americans. We must go together. We don't have to depend on no one for our future of our generations and children. When you think about our consumer abilities, we purchase more than major economies. When you think
Hey!